Thanks for having me.
Could you kind of state by Teresa's request?
Okay.
Yeah, she's,
You're through?
she's has a range. Yeah, she'll move a little
Okay.
bit.
Am I good here though? Yeah? Okay. I gotta fumble with things, nervous. So my name is Hilary, and I'm a woman in long-term recovery. My sobriety date is 4/21 of 2019, and I will say,
Praise God.
it's not been an easy 6 years. There's been a lot of trials and tribulations, but I'm here to tell you all why I am here. Like, God helped me through every bit of that. So I'll start off kind of where I came from. I was born and raised in Southern Illinois, and I was raised in I had a good childhood. I was raised in a good family, had a huge family. Raised in a Catholic home, and from a young age, I went to like Bible school and stuff like that, but I always remember that being told that God would punish me for certain things, and I still didn't have that understanding of like my own understanding with God. But my parents had to marry when they were pregnant with me, because they were pregnant in high school, and that wasn't, family didn't approve too much of that, but they had me and my two brothers. My father went to the military. He didn't like it, so he only did the first 3 years, and my mom, they say not to diagnose other people, but she's in long-term recovery now as well. She's got 5 years, and yeah, thank God. It was rough. But I see now, looking back, the isms that they talk about with the alcoholism, the behaviors. My parents, there wasn't like any crazy abuse or anything, but there was some kind of altercations, and Mom would take me and my brothers, and I can't even tell. My timeline is all over the place. I don't know how many schools I've been to. I've lived in Pennsylvania, I've lived in St. Louis, I've lived in Vegas, North Dakota. I've been all over the place. So my timeline is a little messy, but that's okay. But Mom would take me and my brothers and, would run off for a couple weeks, maybe a month, I don't know. I just knew I was going to see family. My mother was adopted at a young age, so we would see biological family, still around our adopted family. They were all just family to me. So there was a lot of that until I was about 7 or 8. My parents had split. And me and my brothers stayed with my father in Southern Illinois, and Mom moved to Vegas. And Dad eventually remarried. She had 3 children, so that made me the oldest of 6 kids. Her and my father had my youngest brother, so maybe oldest of 7. Yeah, 7 kids. No, that makes 6. Sorry, that makes 6 kids. And 2 weeks after he was born, my father was hit and killed by a drunk driver. I was the oldest of all these kids at 11. I remember a lot of fighting between the family because they didn't want us to go with my mom. But that's where we wanted to be with our mother, I didn't see any addiction. I didn't know what drugs were. I didn't grow up around that stuff, but apparently it was around. I just didn't know. So 2002, we moved to Vegas, me and my 2 brothers, and it was different. I had lived in a few different places, but Vegas was a whole different ballgame, especially from Southern Illinois, where there's nothing but cornfields and coal mines. It's a big change. And it only took a year or 2, and I started going down the spiral. I started, the teenage years were coming, and You know, when I lost my father, that was the first time I had ever questioned a God. I lost my faith at a very young age. I started to become angry, and I didn't like how I felt inside, and I even came to a point where I was cutting myself because I didn't like how I felt on the inside, so I wanted to make something different on the outside. I started drinking, I started getting high, and my mom didn't know what to do with me. You know, I'm her first teenager, and I was crazy. I wouldn't know what to do with me. Good Lord. We were in Vegas for 3 years. The 3 years we were out there, I think we came back to Illinois a couple times. You know, it was Mom's pattern, and we would come back after a couple weeks. The 3 years I was out there, I think I went to 3 different schools. So I learned to put on different masks and blend in and be that chameleon really quick. I lost who I was, and just, I liked that negative attention. From being that crazy, wild girl, I got that negative attention that I was seeking. My mom's husband at the time, he became more aggressive, and he started having these marks all over him. I wasn't aware of what methamphetamines were. But my mom had told me, you know, we're leaving, we're going to move to Indiana, and she explained to me what meth was, and I was like, I'm never gonna do that stuff. So we moved to Corden, Indiana, 2005, and I started my freshman year. And real quick, I found the people that, you know, the party people. And I felt bad because my brothers, you know, looking back, I always felt bad for my brothers having to see me like that because they knew who I really was. I'm their loving, caring sister, but at the same time, I'm losing my mind. I started dating guys a lot older than me. When I was 17, I moved in with a guy that was 24, and I did okay for a while. I did get arrested for the first time for some weed, and I got a slap. You know, I've never had serious consequences for any of the things I had done. I had harmed a lot of people, and it was a slap on the wrist. So the guy that I was with, he had already had a penitentiary number in Kentucky and Indiana, so, you know, I dove into the red flags head first, you know, swan dived right into that. So, there was another time we had gotten pulled over, and I was like, well, I'm underage, and you know, I won't get in as much trouble as you will. So I've always had slap on the wrist, right? Well, this time they had sent me to Muncie, which was a military-based juvenile detention center, and it was hands-on. It was a very scary place. I turned 18 when I was in there, and it scared me for a little bit. It scared me straight for just a little bit, just long enough to get through probation, and then eventually I was back at it. There was a lot of turmoil between my mother and I. We got to a point where we were using together, and it was just really toxic and unhealthy, and I didn't approve of her husband, her new husband, and I was glad that I had separated myself. You know, I loved my mother, but it was really toxic at that time. I maintained for years, didn't get in any trouble. One year we had gotten in debt, and we had a friend that came over with a lot of methamphetamine, stuff I said I would never do, right? And I was one of them that had to have a substance in me every day. And there wasn't anything around but methamphetamine. So guess what I did? I did the meth. And the world just got real dark real quick. It was nonstop for 3 years, just all day, every day. I had a job that I had for 7 years. I got fired because I had been up for so long, I would sleep. I'm supposed to be opening the store. I was a manager. My car was totaled. The first car I had ever had in my name was totaled. it was just 3 years of just chaos. Me and the arguments that, I was with that man for 11 years, the one I was with at 17. The fights that you get into when you're on that stuff is just, I'll never forget that anger. And there were times I'd put my hands on him. I would get so angry that I put my hands on him. It got to a point, I carried a pistol around with me. We were dealing this stuff. We were robbing houses. Just hurting a lot of people. December of 2017, finally, the only prayers I had prayed at that time were, God, please let this life end. Please don't let me wake up in the morning. That was the only prayer that I knew what to pray for then. But he showed up in my life whenever I was surrounded by a bunch of cops, December 9th of 2017. I had a lot of meth on me that night, thank God, because I needed to sit down. And I'll just never forget the peace that came over me when those handcuffs were put on me. Because I couldn't stop on my own. I was ready to end my life. I was just tired. I was tired. And rest was here. Rest was coming. I had never had serious time before, so I knew I was going to be sitting for a long time. I didn't know what that looked like until my first offer came of like 12 years. I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a long time. But okay, here I am. I just sat in that Harrison County Jail, and I didn't know about recovery. It's never been introduced to me in my life. But I'd been there. I sat there for 6 months, kept hearing about this breakaway house, and I didn't know much about it. I knew that it was a house full of women. Recovery, I still didn't know what recovery was. I didn't have an understanding that there were people that walked around completely sober. That was baffling to me. You haven't had a drink today or anything? That was normal to me. Maladjusted to life. And I always just told myself, I'm just going to do my time, And then after 6 months of sitting there and the prosecutor looking at me and saying, you're going to do at least 3 years in prison. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll try this breakaway thing. Let's see what this breakaway thing, maybe they'll give me a chance. And they did. They gave me a furlough to the breakaway. And I did that so I wouldn't have to go to prison. I had no idea what I was going into. My thought process was, I'm going from a pod full of women to a house full of women. Here we go. I thought it was a facility. I didn't know. I didn't get any rec time like when I was in jail. So I remember the gratitude of being able to feel that breeze on my face, feel the grass, and just all the little things. And coming to this breakaway house and these women telling me they love me. I'm like, how do they love me? They don't know me, They don't know the things I've done. But I just was just there. I was real quiet for a long time. I was there and just watched them all. I didn't trust them. I'm watching. But it grew on me pretty quick. They told me to get a sponsor. I found a sponsor, started working the steps, did my chores, did everything that was asked of me, and I was really surprised with the humility that I had. I just did as I was told. I didn't want to have to go back to jail if I didn't have to, so why not try something different and see what it's about. So by the time it's a 6 to 9 month program, at the 6 month mark, they gave me a graduation date, and by that time I told them, you're going to have to evict me. I'm not going anywhere. And even though that was 2018 when I graduated, I still have relationships with those women today. I still go, usually I see them every Thursday, but God has me here today. I'm on the board for the breakaway. I get to be a part of that house still. But I graduated, and being on a furlough, they offered me a plea. A dealing level 3 felony they offered because I completed that house. 2 years of probation, and to drop that to a possession level 6. I cried and I signed it. And I didn't want to go back to court. And, I was in New Albany, as I had a support group. And that's something I'd never had before. Not sober support group. And I didn't want to leave those women. We had an alumni house next door that opened up. I stayed there for 2 years. Wasn't going anywhere. It was my bubble. And that's how I met Deidre. She's my breakaway sister. I had left that 11-year relationship. He continued to do the same things that we were doing before. Nothing had changed. I had found out some things behind my back, and I just needed to cut that off. I still, I will say, in jail before I got released, I got this Bible. I got the Life Recovery Bible, and it's dated from Washington County Jail from 3/6/2018. And I knew I was doing a lot of time, so I said, why not just start right in the beginning? And as I'm reading through it, it was the night before I got that furlough. I was reading through it, and it just came over me. I had never hit my knees to pray, and I hit my knees, and I just cried. I cried to God, and I was like, please just let me go tomorrow. Let me try something new. I don't want to go to prison. I just broke down and just surrendered in that moment. And I will say that was one of my first spiritual experiences. Going to REC, we had REC in jail, where the church comes into the jail and they just have a weekend full of praise and food and worship. It was beautiful. I cried the whole weekend. I don't like to admit that I cry, or I don't like to cry. I cry a lot. So anyway, yeah, I graduated Breakaway. I'm next door. I still wasn't back into a church. I still prayed, but I still hadn't fully surrendered. I'm still trying to learn things. I'm still new to it. I wasn't paying attention to my behaviors. I wasn't putting a substance into my body, but I was seeking those out. I wasn't filling the God-sized hole with God. I was seeking attention, the validation. And not long after I ended that relationship, I found somebody that wasn't sober. I was only with him for a few months, but I ended up relapsing with 18 months. I had 18 months sober. And it was for a couple of days, and I didn't like the way I felt. I immediately left that man, and I got a new sponsor, and I started my steps over again. I still sought that through. I was, didn't want to surrender, left to my own devices, didn't want to let go of the wheel. I still was seeking that through men. And I got with someone that was in an Oxford house, and we were together for about 8 months. And I was a week away from my second 1 year of sobriety, and he had overdosed. He had relapsed, and I had to bury him a week before my 1 year. And I didn't know what to do. I know what path I would have led down, because I was starting to slip with him. And those women at the breakaway surrounded me. They came over to the alumni house. They just surrounded me. So a week after that, I did get to celebrate that 1 year. Thank God. Not long after that, I got another boyfriend. It's the men. I was terrible. I was with that one a year. He was, sick in his recovery. But after that year, I didn't like how I was feeling. So I just kept, this time I was like, all right, I got to break off from these men. I need to start just following God. Because it's just not working for me. I didn't like how I felt on the inside. It wasn't right with my spirit. And about a few months after that, there was a guy I had known in recovery for 5 years that had we started talking, and we started dating. And it started feeling really healthy. I'd never in my life had a healthy relationship. I had always been cheated on, and it's just always been toxic. And I started going to church with him, and cried every Sunday. And we were together about 6 months, you know, in recovery, a lot of people move real fast. So after 6 months, we got a house together. And we were both pregnant. We were both 32 at this time, and we got pregnant. It was our first child. And I'm just grateful that I never had a child in my addiction, because I would have dragged that child through hell with me. He had proposed after we found out we were pregnant, and it was great. We had a lot going on. You know, we had our baby, Kaya. She is so smart. I've never had a 2-year-old crack me up so much. This kid is hilarious. She can be mean too. She's my kid. She's 2 now. So Luke, he was coming up on 6 years. I started seeing mental decline, and he would share that with me, but eventually he had relapsed. So about 1.5 years ago, he had a relapse, and I didn't know what to do, because he's one of them, he just goes AMA. So I'm like, do I need to call the hospital? Who do I call? He just didn't come home. And I know Luke sober. I don't know him high. I will say the past 1.5 years, it's been on and off. And I had to leave. I had to pack up that beautiful home, take my little girl, and moved from, you know, where we were at to Pekin. And I moved in with my mother, because I didn't want her to ever see anything that I had to see. You know, not that he brought it home necessarily, but it was enough to where you could feel it. I don't want her feeling those things. And that was hard for me. Honestly, if I didn't have her, I probably would have stuck around and got just as sick. So God definitely placed that baby in my life, and she's made me a very strong woman. Even when I don't know how I can make it happen, I make it happen. Yeah. So I found out that he had been unfaithful when he was using during the relapses, and there's been a lot of pain this 1.5 years. There's a lot of pain. But I just continue to get closer with God. Because there were times I wanted to go find him and whoop his butt. Yeah, whoop him. But what good would that be? You know, I just stayed there with my baby girl, and I prayed. That's all I could do. I was so heartbroken and angry. And even on my good days, I just thank him. I thank God. Kind of back up just a little bit. My mom, whenever I had graduated the breakaway, see I told you my timeline's messy. She had went to prison, and she was incarcerated for the same thing I was, for dealing in meth. And she did 18 months in prison. And she would always tell me, you sound different. The way I spoke, and I don't know, she just said I sounded different. And when she got out of prison, she went through the breakaway. Yeah, it was beautiful. I got to break that cycle. A lot of my family in Southern Illinois, there's not much help down there. So most of my family is still high if they haven't already died from this disease, because most of them have. My youngest brother, he's been struggling with addiction since he was 15 or 16. I just found out a couple days ago he's in Scott County Jail, thank God, because he has been struggling again since he did 2 years in Washington County Jail a few years ago. And it's just been on and popping since. But I just pray for him every day, because I remember being that sick, being that selfish and inconsiderate, you know. That's my baby brother. I won't enable him, though. I won't do it. I will say it's been about 4 or 5 months since Luke used the last time. I'm just grateful, like, we're still separated, because before I was willing to work on it. You know, because God's forgiving, I'm gonna be forgiving. As long as you're willing to do the work on yourself and change. He did it about 4 or 5 months ago, and I just had to completely, like, you have got to work on yourself, you know? I know he's got a new sponsor. I've been going to therapy and just continuing to seek God. I would need to heal, you know, and not try to fill that hole, right, with Luke. And just been taking care of me and baby girl. And although it's not easy living out at mom's, it is with her being sober. It's just I don't have a lot of space, you know. But it works. We have a roof over our head. I work with Thrive. I get to work in the jail today. To actually willingly go into a jail and help other people to get into treatment. I get to help them with resources. I just remember that desperation whenever I was in jail, and I didn't have a team in there that told me what recovery was, what options are out there, what resources are out there. I didn't have someone telling me, you're not alone through this whole thing, you know? We get to meet with them all the time in the jail. We get to walk them out the doors as long as they want us to. Like, if they want to run off, they can, you know? Hopefully we'll catch you out there. But we take them to treatment. We follow them the whole way. We've got a whole team on the community that meets with them and gets them connected with any resource they may possibly need. I will say it's the best job I've ever had in recovery. I've worked in recovery the whole time I've been in recovery, and it was draining. You know, inpatient, true healing. I will say working in a jail, I never would have thought being in jail all day throughout the week was what made me happy. But I feel like I'm just rambling on at this point, but I'm just grateful that you all have asked me to speak up here. I've never got to do it for a church before. I will say I've been trying to get back into this Bible. I don't pick it up as often as I'd like to. I'm wanting to get back into the book of Matthew. I was always told if scripture stuck out to you to dig more into that. So I'm going to dive into some Matthew here soon and just bust the dust off of this thing. So, yeah. Congratulations on the guys that got the Bibles. And just keep coming back here. And that's all I got. I ended a little early.